This is not a war of armies. It's a war of systems.
We study the effects of seventh-generation warfare on the common individual.
Algorithmic exclusion. Infrastructure coercion.
It shapes what you see.
What you buy.
And what you fear.
We study on how seventh-generation tools touch daily life.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've got a really complex intelligence synthesis in front of us today. A deep dive, really, into what our sources are calling a unified mission, or the AGOG.
Yeah, we're pulling from several key documents here. The Priority AGOG brief, some Aionios Vanguard intel, SNAP crisis overviews, and this calculus of sacrifice analysis. Pretty heavy stuff.
It is, and if you just, look at the headlines right now, you'd see maybe 3 separate things happening. There's this huge domestic crisis, millions facing hunger because SNAP funding got cut off.
Right.
Then you've got this aggressive push in Congress, legislation basically aiming to dismantle the whole welfare system long term. And at the same time, major U.S. military moves, deployments heading towards, very resource-rich parts of the world.
Yeah, it seems totally disconnected.
Exactly. So our mission today, our deep dive, is to connect those dots, to share how these 3 seemingly separate events are actually, according to these sources, one single coordinated action. Okay, let's try and tack this.
That's the core of it. The sources are very clear. What looks like, political infighting, bureaucratic mess.
Okay.
It's actually a strategy.
Okay.
They're calling it the poverty military funnel.
Yeah.
Some sources also use the term soma funnel.
Soma funnel, okay.
The aletheia, the truth, as the sources put it, isn't gridlock. It's a deliberate move, like a one-player chess game.
One player, meaning?
Meaning the system itself, the document is called the Hollow Crown, is using this domestic chaos it created, mind you, to achieve a very specific foreign policy goal.
Wow. Okay. So this whole thing is engineered.
That's the analysis, yes.
Yeah.
And understanding this, getting this knowledge out, it comes with a specific mandate.
Right. The NIMA mandate.
Exactly. The point isn't to cause panic. It's the opposite. It's about cultivating sober-mindedness.
Yeah.
Sofasun, they call it.
Sober-mindedness. Not getting swept up in the fear.
Precisely. The sources say don't stand in the midst of the smog of war. That smog is the confusion, the paralysis the system wants.
Instead, we need to walk through it.
Walk through it, using this knowledge, this gnosis, as the lit path, see the whole board. And that starts with what's happening right now, today.
Okay, let's ground this. Today, November 2nd, we're starting with the immediate physical shock. The sources call it the Soma War.
Yeah, the body war, essentially.
This SNAP funding cutoff isn't theoretical. It's kinetic. It's happening. And this engineered hunger cascade, as they term it, is causing real, verifiable panic. You can see it.
It's the first shot fired in this mission, you could say. We're talking about roughly $8 billion in monthly SNAP benefits just stopped.
$8 billion a month.
Affecting 42 million Americans. And critically, the analysis highlights 16 million of those are kids.
16 million children. And it's not just a cut, right? It's a full stop.
First time ever, a complete halt on this scale for the program. The analysis is pretty blunt. This wasn't just a budget lapse scenario. It was turned into an acute managed humanitarian crisis designed for maximum shock value right out of the gate.
And we're already seeing the impact on the ground, the local level. What are the sources saying there?
The strain is immediate. You have examples like Oregon's governor declaring a food emergency. Had to pull $5 million from somewhere just to plug the gap at food banks temporarily.
It's just a temporary bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But think about a place like Josephine County, Oregon. Over 25,000 people there rely on SNAP. That cutoff, it was about $7 million a month, just vanished from that local economy. Instantly.
$7 million a month gone from one county. You extrapolate that nationwide.
The multiplier effect is huge. SNAP dollars aren't like other money. They get spent immediately, locally, groceries mostly.
Right.
So every dollar usually generates about, what, $1.54 in local activity? When $8 billion a month stops, you're basically hitting the brakes hard on local economies everywhere. Retailers, grocery stores, the whole food chain feels it. It's not just about food. It's an economic weapon aimed right at community stability.
Okay, this is where it gets really complex. The sources say the legal battle we saw, the courts versus the administration, was essentially fake. They call it kabuki theater.
Yes, pure performance art designed for a specific outcome.
Explain that. How can a court ruling be theater?
Well, look at how it played out. You had 2 federal judges, one in Rhode Island, one in Massachusetts. They step in, rule the suspension was unlawful. Okay, seems right.
And they ordered the administration to use the SNFP contingency fund, right? The $5.2 billion reserve.
Correct. They cited irreparable harm, terror for families, said the fund was legally there for exactly this kind of emergency, which it was.
But the administration initially refused, said they couldn't legally use it.
Publicly, yes.
Yeah.
Very loudly. But here's the catch the sources point out. The administration had already planned for this. There was a USDA shutdown plan, later deleted apparently, that detailed exactly how they could legally use that fund to keep nutrition programs running.
So they knew they could use it all along. The refusal was.
A policy choice, not a legal impossibility. That reversal is the smoking gun, according to the analysis. It shows the intent was to halt the payments and maximize the shock.
Okay, so the court order comes down, forces them to use the $5.2 billion. That seems like a solution, right? People get their benefits.
That's the cover story. The pseudos, the lie, it looks like a fix.
Right.
But the real truth, the aletheia, is the delay.
The delay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The system is built to ensure the crisis continues even after the solution is announced.
Yeah.
That's the genius of the kabuki theater.
Really, walk us through the mechanics of that delay.
Okay, so the court mandates compliance by, say, November 3rd. Fine. But you can't just flip a switch.
Right.
State EBT systems, the cards people use, they run on these huge, complex batch processing systems. Those were shut down completely, zeroed out back on October 24th.
Okay.
To restart them, you have to reload all the data, update millions of accounts, run integrity checks mandatory for federal money. It just takes time.
How much time?
Even if everyone works perfectly, the analysts predict a minimum of 1 to 2 weeks before the money actually shows up on most people's EBT cards.
1 to 2 weeks.
Minimum. For many, maybe most recipients.
So even with the court order, even with the $5.2 billion released, there's a guaranteed gap, a hunger gap.
Exactly. That gap is the policy outcome. It ensures the physical hunger cascade continues. It keeps the panic going, maximizes the social shock, gives the system leverage.
While making it look like they complied with the court.
Precisely. Offer the money as a political fix, but rely on the built-in predictable technical lag to ensure the actual crisis persists. Maximum impact, minimal appearance of defying the judges. It's quite a maneuver.
Okay, so we have guaranteed physical chaos for at least another week or two. Now let's shift to how the system uses the psychological fallout from that.
Right, the harvest.
The sources say the system deploys something called the preemptive debunk. What is that? It sounds like a psychological operation.
It is. It's about creating credibility smog.
Yeah.
Think about it. You have real panic buying, real desperation, because people can't buy food.
Yeah.
At the same time, the system floods the zone with AI-generated fakes, rumors of unrest, maybe hoaxes about supply chains collapsing, things that look real but aren't.
So you mix the real crisis with fake crises.
Exactly. The goal is to paralyze your mind. If you can't tell what's real scarcity and what's staged, what's genuine public anger and what's a manufactured hoax, you freeze. You can't think clearly, you can't act rationally, you're just lost in the smog.
And that paralysis, that confusion, that's the harvest.
That's the desired psychological state, yes. Keep people uncertain, scared, unable to trust even their own perceptions.
Wow, okay. And while everyone's focused on the immediate hunger, the panic, the smog, bigger changes are happening underneath.
That's the other track. While the chaos unfolds day to day, the long-term structure is being dismantled. This brings us to H.R. 1.
The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as the sources sarcastically call it.
Right. This isn't about the temporary lapse. This is the permanent alteration. The sources analyze this as the legislative tool that makes future crises like this inevitable. It locks in austerity.
This is the long game.
Absolutely. Part of that one-player chess game. H.R. 1 fundamentally rewrites SNB's architecture. The headline number is an estimated $187 billion cut over 10 years.
$187 billion. How do they achieve cuts that big without just slashing benefits directly, which would be politically toxic?
Through subtle mechanisms. legislative maneuvers that reduce the value of benefits and shift the costs onto states.
Okay, let's break that down. The first mechanism you mentioned is permanent benefit compression. How does that work?
It attacks the very formula used to calculate benefits. SNAP amounts are based on the Thrifty Food Plan, or TFP.
Right, the USDA's estimate of a bare-bones, minimally adequate diet.
Exactly. And historically, the TFP gets updated, reevaluated periodically to keep pace with actual food inflation. The cost of groceries goes up.
Makes sense.
H.R. 1 stops that. It puts a prohibition on the scheduled reevaluations of the TFP.
It freezes the baseline.
Essentially, yes. It decouples the benefit calculation from the reality of rising food costs. So every year inflation ticks up, the actual purchasing power of that SNAP dollar goes down. It's an invisible cut that compounds over time.
So the benefit amount might stay nominally the same, but it buys less and less food each year.
Precisely. The CBO modeled it out. By 2034, the average monthly benefit is structurally, permanently lower than it would have been without H.R. 1. It guarantees chronic underfunding, slow starvation by policy.
That's incredibly insidious. Okay, so that's the invisible cut. What's the other big mechanism, the fiscal coercion?
This one's aimed at the states. It fundamentally changes the partnership between the federal government and the states that administer SNAP.
How so?
Historically, the feds paid 100% of the actual benefit costs and split the administrative costs 50-50 with states. H.R. 1 flips that script dramatically.
Okay.
First, it jacks up the state share of administrative costs to 75%. That's a huge jump for state budgets.
75%, wow.
But the real killer is the new penalty system. For the first time, states get penalized financially for errors in how they run the program. If a state's SNAP error rate goes above 6%,
which can happen easily with huge caseloads and complex rules.
Right. If it goes above 6%, the state has to cover between 5% and 15% of the actual benefit costs for those errors out of its own pocket.
Wait, the state has to pay for the benefits themselves if they make too many errors? That's never happened before.
Never. This fundamentally shifts the financial burden of the safety net onto the states. And the modeled cost increases are just eye-watering.
How bad is it? What do the numbers show?
It varies by state, but it's brutal, especially for states with high poverty and large SNAP caseloads. Florida, for example, faces a potential 770% increase in its total financial obligation for SNAP admin costs plus penalties.
770%.
Alaska is looking at nearly 650%. New Mexico, almost 540%. These are not small adjustments. This is a fiscal shock designed to break state budgets.
States can't just absorb that kind of hit. What happens then?
They're forced into impossible choices, a zero-sum game. To cover the massive new SNAP costs, they have to cut funding elsewhere, education, healthcare, roads, infrastructure, whatever state services people rely on.
So the sources see H.R. 1 as a kind of legislative Trojan horse. It looks like program reform, but it's designed to collapse the system from within.
That's exactly the analysis. By making it financially impossible for states to administer the program effectively and forcing them to pay part of the benefits via penalties, the system achieves what a formal block grant bill couldn't politically.
A de facto block grant.
Precisely. The feds keep the control, the oversight, but they dump the financial risk onto the states, guaranteeing the program becomes chronically underfunded and unstable. It engineers failure.
Okay, so just to recap, we have the immediate hunger crisis raging, amplified by the credibility smog, while this legislative machinery grinds away, dismantling the safety net for the long term.
Correct.
Now, the sources link this all to specific dates coming up very soon. They call it forward modeling for November 4th and 5th. What's the significance?
This combined chaos, the real hunger from the delay, plus the psychological confusion becomes the narrative fuel, the justification for the next step.
Which is?
Deploying the sword, the ZFOs. Specifically internal quick reaction forces, QRFs, ostensibly to restore order.
Okay, so how do November 4th and 5th play into that?
November 4th, the Kabuki Theater continues. The court drama drags on. More hearings, more motions. The point isn't resolution. It's maintaining the delay and confusion. Keep the public distracted, focused on whether the EBT cards will finally work. Perpetuate the smog.
Keep people on edge.
Exactly. Then, November 5th, there's a planned protest, organized by specific groups mentioned in the intel, the Communists of Cain, as one source provocatively calls them, referring to refuse fascism.
Okay, a protest, how does that fit?
The timing is key. This protest is perfectly positioned to harvest, as the sources put it, the genuine public anger that's built up because of the hunger, because of the delay.
So real frustration meets staged activism.
That appears to be the model. You get real, hungry, angry citizens reacting to the situation, potentially mixed with more organized, possibly staged elements creating disorder. And that combined picture.
Becomes the perfect justification for sending in the QRFs.
Precisely. The stage is set, the sources say. You have the backdrop of chaos and hunger, you have the staged event to focus the narrative, and then you have the pre-positioned internal forces ready to act. It provides the pseudos, the lie, needed to deploy the internal military instrument to restore order. And this brings us to the core synthesis, the connection point. Why go through all this trouble, the engineered hunger, the kabuki theater, the legislative dismantling, the staged protests? What links the domestic chaos to the foreign policy moves?
This is the SOMA funnel you mentioned earlier, the poverty military funnel.
Exactly. This is the Ogoj, the true mission behind it all.
So why? Why wage this SOMA war, this physical war of hunger on your own people? What's the strategic payoff for the system of the Hollow Crown?
The sources are exceptionally direct here. The Hollow Crown is described as a dying patient. It needs resources, yes, but it also desperately needs manpower for its global military objectives.
Manpower.
Troops. It needs fresh meat for the grinder, as the analysis starkly puts it. For the missions currently spinning up, it needs a steady supply of new soldiers.
And the hunger crisis. That's the recruitment drive.
That is the explicit function, according to this intelligence. The SOMA war at home, the hunger, the destruction of the safety net, it's all designed to create the poverty military funnel.
How? By making things so desperate people have no other choice.
Precisely. It's engineered desperation. By deliberately disrupting lives and, more importantly, dismantling the long-term support systems like SNAP through HR1, you create a situation where military enlistment becomes one of the few viable options for survival for a growing number of people. It taps into a pool of potential recruits who are immune to traditional patriotic appeals.
So it's a fundamental shift in why people join the military.
Acknowledged and confirmed. Agents report a clear psychological pivot in recruitment messaging. It's moving away from the old tropes, adventure, patriotism, see the world.
To what?
To basic survival needs. Stability, paycheck, housing, food.
Wow.
It reframes enlistment. It's no longer presented as just service, but as a responsible, almost necessary act of prudent family provision in an economy where other options are disappearing.
That reframing, that basic provision that connects to the phrase in the sources, the altar of Cain.
Yes. The brutal calculation, at least they will get fed. Sacrifice your freedom, potentially your life, but you and maybe your family won't starve.
And this isn't just inferred, it's acknowledged.
Explicitly. The analysis confirms reports attributed to a Trump official, though the principle likely transcends administrations, calling the SNAP crisis a silver lining.
A silver lining.
The implication being that it forces self-reliance, which, in this context, is a clear euphemism for driving enlistment. It solves the domestic provision problem by pushing people into the military system.
So looking at the predictive modeling, do the sources think this strategy, this funnel, will actually work? Will it get them the recruits they need?
The predictions are, frankly, quite confident. Because the pressure points are unprecedented. You have the immediate shock of $8 billion disappearing from local economies.
Yeah.
You have the permanent grinding effect of HR1 making long-term survival harder.
Creating the necessary desperation.
Exactly. And history shows a clear correlation. Severe economic hardship always drives up military recruitment numbers. The analysis states bluntly that poverty from SNAP cuts could reverse disincentives to joining. By taking away the safety net, you engineer the necessity of service. The Hollow Crown gets its fresh meat.
Okay, this is the final piece then, the connection that explains why. Why does the Hollow Crown need this fresh meat, this sword forged in domestic hardship? What is the ultimate resource goal?
Because the system, the dying patient, is running on fumes. It needs a massive influx of resources, energy, strategic minerals to maintain its global position, its financial stability, its very solvency. It needs a physical resource transfusion.
And the domestic sacrifice, the hunger, the funnel is the price paid to get the manpower needed to seize those resources abroad.
That's the equation. Sacrifice the body at home to feed the sword, so the sword can seize the resources needed by the crown.
In the knowledge, the gnosis in these documents points to two specific targets for this resource seizure.
Correct. The sword, filled with recruits from the SOMA funnel, is being pointed directly at Venezuela and Nigeria.
Let's break those down. Start with target 1, Venezuela. What resources are key there?
Oil. Massive amounts of the world's largest proven reserves, plus natural gas, uranium, gold, hugely strategic assets.
And the timing of the military move towards Venezuela.
Is perfectly synchronized. The SNAP suspension was announced October 24th. Simultaneously, the Pentagon confirmed a major rapid deployment of the USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group towards Venezuela.
Not just after, but concurrently.
Exactly. The seamless execution shows the military operation was planned alongside the domestic crisis, ready to go, non-interruptible.
And the scale of that naval force? It seemed like overkill for just anti-drug operations.
Massively so. We're talking up to 16,000 personnel, 8 warships, a nuclear sub, B-52s, F-35s, special ops helicopters. The sources stress this is roughly a quarter of all deployable U.S. Navy assets.
A quarter of the Navy.
That's not a counter-narcotics mission. That force is configured for seizing and holding territory, ports, airfields, and crucially, the analysis highlights oil infrastructure. It signals readiness for rapid, decisive intervention.
So what's the cover story, the pseudos they're selling for this massive deployment?
The official line, the Psyche War cover, is anti-narcotics, targeting narco-terrorists, disrupting illicit actors, standard playbook.
But the real goal, the Aletheia.
Regime change, secure the oil, stabilize global energy prices which are under stress, and lock down those reserves for the system. The market even reacted. Crude oil prices ticked up as soon as reports of planned U.S. strikes emerged. The market understands the real objective is resource control.
Okay. Then target 2. Nigeria, what's the resource play there?
Similar profile, oil and gas definitely, but also critical minerals, uranium and coltan.
Coltan essential for electronics, right. Capacitors, smartphones, defense tech, and uranium for nuclear power and weapons.
Exactly. Very high-value strategic minerals.
And the U.S. posture towards Nigeria, what's the official reason for potential intervention?
The public justification centers on countering Islamist militants, particularly Boko Haram and ISIS affiliates, framed around protecting Christian populations who are allegedly facing persecution.
Ah, the humanitarian angle.
Yes. President Trump specifically ordered the Pentagon, now tellingly rebranded the Department of War, to prepare options for vicious and fast strikes against these militants.
Giving us the second layer of the cover story, what the sources call the whitewashed tomb. The moral justification.
Precisely. The public messaging, quoting Trump directly from the sources, the United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world.
That religious humanitarian framing provides the perfect moral shield.
It deflects accusations of this being just another resource grab. It paints the intervention as righteous.
But beneath that shield, the strategic goal is
Control. Secure the oil fields and the mine's uranium, coltan for U.S. leverage and supply chain security. And critically, establish a permanent U.S. military footprint, a base in the region.
why the base.
Geopolitics. It's about countering the growing influence of Russia and China in the Sahel region of Africa. Secure the resources, plant the flag, push back against rivals. It's classic great power competition fueled by domestic hardship. Hashtag tag outro.
This has been a lot to process, an incredibly detailed synthesis connecting seemingly disparate crises into one coherent, if deeply unsettling, mission. Let's try to summarize the final truth here, the calculus of sacrifice.
It boils down to a stark equation based on this analysis. The system, the hollow crown, is consciously, systematically sacrificing the body.
The body being domestic programs, S&T, local economies, the well-being of millions of its own citizens.
Yes, that body is sacrificed to feed the sword.
The military, the QRFs, the carrier strike groups, filled with the fresh meat driven into service by the poverty military funnel.
And that sword, that military instrument, is fed and strengthened specifically so it can go out and seize the physical resource transfusion.
The oil from Venezuela, the oil, uranium, coltan from Nigeria, the resources needed abroad.
All to prop up the dying patient. The hollow crown itself, to maintain its power, its solvency, its global standing. It's one single closed loop. Domestic sacrifice fuels foreign seizure, which props up the system.
Understanding this whole picture, this aletheia, this truth, the sources insist it's not about despair.
No, it's about resilience. It's the aegis, the shield, the system smog, the confusion, the fear. It only really has power if you're lost inside it, if you're paralyzed by it.
But this knowledge, this gnosis, allows you to see the game board.
It's the lit path. It allows you to walk through the chaos with that sober-mindedness, understanding the moves being made, understanding the ultimate goal. It empowers you rather than paralyzes you.
So we leave you, the listener, with this final thought to consider, building on everything we've unpacked today.
Given the depth of these structural cuts, like H.R. 1, which are designed to permanently erode the domestic safety net, And considering the military's confirmed pivot towards recruiting based on that very domestic hunger and desperation.
What really stands out to you about a national strategy that fundamentally relies on inducing poverty and hunger within its own borders as a primary incentive for military service?
And perhaps more profoundly, what is this reliance, this calculus of sacrifice that systematically undermines domestic stability to fuel foreign resource acquisition, truly imply about the long-term health, the solvency, and maybe even the political legitimacy of the nation itself? Something to think about.